direwolves? What's all this?
I'm doing this video specifically to talk about Colossal Biosciences introduction of direwolf pups. It's big news right now, big genetics news, big conservation news.
So they're just inserting traits, right? No actual direwolf genes were spliced in. I mean, they're just fake wolves.
Okay, so this misconception of, well, no actual direwolf DNA was taken out of fossils and then glued into gray wolf DNA. And so these are just normal gray wolves genetically manipulated to kind of resemble Hollywood direwolves and get people excited. But there's no real direwolf inside these pups. This came from science promoters and science educators trying to offer an accessible information to the layman. So using simple terms, not using technical jargon, not explaining in mathematics, using very simple words, analogies, metaphors, things like that. So laymen can understand what's going on without being a geneticist, without being actual scientists. But then laymen who read too deeply into these explanations start thinking, I caught a loophole here. Oh, he said something that sounds inconsistent there. This must all be a giant scam because it doesn't sound right. It sounds silly the way he's phrasing it. And that's only because they're trying to allow the mass public to understand without using technical jargon. In this case, Colossal Biosciences mentioned they're inserting traits into the gray wolf DNA. And people think, traits? That doesn't sound like DNA. Sounds like they're just manipulating superficial appearances. No. How do you think the traits manifest? They're genotypical expressions from authentic direwolf genes. And those manifest authentic direwolf traits. No actual direwolf genes were spliced into the gray wolf DNA? That's correct, because you don't actually suck up direwolf genes from a fossil and then kind of meticulously glue it into a gray wolf genome. You actually just learn the code, take that code, and type it in to the gray wolf genome.
So, okay, all right, Dr. Lai. Colossal Biosciences, never heard of it, hasn't published any of its findings, okay? Isn't this just a scam?
Okay, so people are not giving Colossal Biosciences enough credit because they're not giving them enough respect and authority. Now, when you take SpaceX and this rocket descends from space and a giant clamp catches it, it doesn't take a scientist, will know, wow, the SpaceX just did something no one else on this planet can do. So when they say, we know rocket science, you don't need to tell them, show me proof. You've already seen it. Even a non-scientist can understand it. But because this is genetics, this is microscopic, and this is more subtle, it's harder for laymen to understand that Colossal Biosciences is basically the equivalent of SpaceX. It's currently doing things no one else on Earth has been able to do. Multiplex gene editing, recovering DNA from just blood, recovering 500 times more direwolf genome than the latest research prior. All these things were unimaginable before their surprise reveal. So when they say, yes, our data surpasses the latest research that you know about regarding direwolves, and we've recovered 500 times more direwolf genomic information than this latest research. So our research has surpassed it. We have a new take on everything. People kind of scoff instead of first take them at their word and listening to it carefully.
So these pups just look like direwolves. They're just wolves bred for bigger size and white fur. Like, they just look like it. They're not legitimate direwolves, are they?
This is an issue regarding phenotype versus genotype. So people think that these are gray wolves designed, basically manipulated, bred to be a little bigger, a little more snowy fur, a little bigger head, broader shoulders, and it's got nothing to do with direwolf DNA. A dog breeder can do this if you give him a pack of gray wolves to work with. He can breed bigger wolves, just like we can breed bigger dogs. But that's not what's happening. If I have to put it simply, Colossal Biosciences pups are gray wolf pups with authentic direwolf blood running through its veins. And how is that accomplished? Because they inserted actual direwolf gene sequences into the gray wolf genome. So it's incomplete. We're not talking about a full direwolf clone. These gray wolf pups only have a bit of direwolf genes, but every single gene that's in there is authentic.
So research says that direwolves are more related to African jackals, but here they are using grey wolves as a template that looks hype. Like, isn't it just for the looks of hype?
This is a misconception that is the most complex to kind of refute and debunk because it has multiple layers. Let's assume for the moment that, okay, we accept that dyers are actually more closely related genetically to jackals than to greys. Even if that's the case, I still understand why they took the gray as a template. And it's not because the gray is a more sexy, majestic animal that can attract more funding more easily. I mean, yes, grays are a majestic animal, but that's not the reason. So then what is the reason? It has to do with the question, what does speciation even mean when sexual reproduction is not necessary to revive the genome? We're not trying to mate African jackals with a direwolf or with a gray wolf. You don't have to worry about, is it closer in species? Is it closer genetically? Will they be able to mate with each other so we can come out with a mix? We are basically doing computer code, copy pasting genes just by reading it from one source and typing it into another source. In that case, is speciation even the most important factor in thinking about planning this new creature, whether or not it can succeed, both genetically and functionally as a living thing? So Colossal is using a gray wolf template because they already know that based on their current technology, they're only able to edit about 20 loci across 14 genes. So given that the animal that comes out will not be a direwolf clone, they need to make it more functionally similar to a direwolf than if a jackal template was used. And how do you do that? By using a gray wolf template, which is a gray wolf is in terms of stature, in terms of size, in terms of behavior, possibly more close to a direwolf than a slimmer, smaller jackal. That way, the dire traits that would manifest would feel more at home in a body that is functionally closer to, let's say, its ancestral memory. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't sound scientific. It means that even though a German Shepherd is genetically closer to a Chihuahua than to a wolf because they're both dogs, its traits would still be more functional inside a wolf than inside a Chihuahua. Because you got this big German Shepherd, and let's say you stuff it inside an animal. Does it feel more at home inside a wolf or inside a tiny Chihuahua? So, and this is why Beth Shapiro, Colossal's, I believe she's the chief science officer, when Beth Shapiro used her morphological argument, which is basically what I just said, but unfortunately, I don't think she said it in a clear enough way for the layman. When she used her morphological argument, it has merit in this context rather than in specifically an academic context. She basically said, if it looks like a direwolf and it acts like a direwolf, then isn't it more of a direwolf? That sounds very unscientific because people will be thinking, well, that's Lamarckian. That's not real evolution. You can't say something looks like something, therefore it is something. But yes, she's not talking about it in a textbook kind of way. She's talking about it in an engineering kind of way. Like, we're going to make this organism. We want it as close to a direwolf as possible. We got this template. What kind of template should we use so that through our imperfect techniques, we can fully manifest the genes that we're going to insert into it. You can't do it if you put direwolf genes inside a Chihuahua compared to a German Shepherd. I know I'm mixing up examples, but I think that is clearer than Jackal versus Grey Wolf, but it's the same thing. The Jackal is a much smaller, slimmer, more timid animal. It's not a direwolf. I mean, the last idea was, hey, if the Jackal is more closely related, why aren't you using a Jackal template? Is it because Grey Wolves are more sexy? You're using Grey Wolf as a template. So the pups look prettier, right? The idea is, even if the Jackal is more closely related, okay, we know what the direwolf skeleton looks like in a museum. It looks like a super Grey Wolf. So you know those animals are big and mean and aggressive and hunt big game. Do you think if you take its genes, which means it's kind of like you take its soul and put it into a different animal. Okay, I'm gonna put your soul into a different animal. Where would you feel at home? Where would you feel like you can be a direwolf while you're, when I resurrect you, when I give you new life? Inside a slim little jackal? The direwolf, like if its mind is like, if its soul, if its instincts are like a direwolf, and you stuff him into a jackal, there's gonna be like software-hardware conflict. It will be like, what? I can't even beat a cat. How am I supposed to hunt buffalo, right? So that's why they say we gotta put it into an animal that can kind of take its instincts and function with it, right? Okay, what's the closest animal? Well, we got the gray wolf. It's almost as big as the dire wolf. It's also hunts in packs. It's also mean. And it's also determined. It will hunt elk, okay? So then when you put a dire wolf into it, and let's say the animal has the actual instincts of the dire wolf, okay, then it will feel at home. It feels like, okay, I can run as fast as I thought I can run. I can bite as hard as I thought I can bite. At that point, how many genes it has in common with the jackal versus how many genes it has in common with the gray wolf doesn't matter. And that's also part of, is speciation even the major factor anymore? Because we're not trying to mate them. We can just splice genes through our technology. So then that's not the thing you should be looking at.
So what you're saying is that if SpaceX is able to make a rocket that can be reused and caught, that doesn't make it less of a rocket. So a dire wolf.
What kind of example? What are you asking?
No, because people know rockets as one use.
Yeah.
But SpaceX redefined the use of a rocket.
Yes, they redefined the rocket.
So isn't it the same as this dire wolf?
You're saying Colossal is redefining the concept of species.
Correct. It doesn't make it less of a dire wolf, right? The rocket has always been known as one that you shoot out to space and then it dies off, it drops to
So
Earth.
now we're getting into like far future scenario here. Let's say we're talking about a future world where genetic science is godlike. You can clone things, you can resurrect things from the dead, you have complete genomes of every creature on Earth. And then you can easily like change one thing to another. A dog can give birth to a cat. A pig can give birth to a buffalo. At that point, yes, the idea of species becomes much more nebulous. We're not at that point yet, but I guess we're kind of at the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Lai, besides being a full-time geek, what do you actually do as a side job?
I'm a podiatrist and I treat lower extremity disorders. And you can find my clinic in Singapore.